What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and this time we got some pretty interesting things to cover. From an article complaining about players embracing and pushing what they call Western white beauty standards, to Helldivers 2's devs allegedly banning LGBTQ content. And I will also talk later about how the director of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth says video games are a medium worth fighting for, so let's begin. Firstly, there was this article from DualShockers titled, Baldur's Gate 3 mods that glow faces are my pet peeve. The forcing of conventional beauty standards on everything is tiring. The DualShockers journalist is mad because Baldur's Gate 3 players are enjoying a video game the way they want to by using mods, and thinks that everyone should conform to their opinions, and if they don't, they're basically sexist bigots. On Nexus mods right now, there's a mod called Enhanced Nude Bodies which has over 1 million downloads already. And since the mod is pretty not safe for YouTube, I can't even really show any images of it. But this mod understandably does what it says, which takes various characters within BG3 and enhances their bodies to make them look more idealized. There's another mod called Beauty Curvy Body and Sexy Outfits, which is also not very safe for YouTube to show. But like it also says, it makes the characters more attractive and gives various individuals interesting forms of attire, to put it one way. Anyway, according to the DualShocker journalist, they don't exactly find the sexy mods problematic per se because thankfully they understand that BG3 is a very horny game. And it is, which is why those mods have a combined download rate of 1.3 million. And considering BG3 has, at the making of this video anyway, sold somewhere around 10 million units plus, that's a sizable chunk of the player base going and making their playthroughs more not safe for work, which is one way to put it. And hey, I ain't condemning them either, video games are escapism after all. If you want to make Lae'zel or Shadowheart look like a vanilla-wear Dragon's Crown woman, I'm all for the support of that. Because after all, that's what mods are for, they just mod your game and yours alone. Nobody else is affected by it because obviously BG3 is a single player game, so what's the issue exactly? Well, the journo has a problem with other mods they say that bend the knee to Western white standards. As they say in their own words, mods that smoothen out facial features are flirting with this narrative even if that's not the author's intention. Why can't these characters just be themselves? The constant pushing of Western white beauty standards is tiring even if it isn't something as trivial as a Baldur's Gate 3 facial mod. One of the mods they complain about is called Another Face for Lae'zel, which thankfully I can actually show you this one. So here it is. The mod does exactly as it says, as it makes Lae'zel conventionally more attractive and less reptilian alien-like. Here's a side-by-side comparison for you. On the left is your original Lae'zel, and on the right is what the mod does, and yeah, obviously the mod does make Lae'zel more conventionally attractive. Although I love Lae'zel either way, after all, she was my love interest when I beat BG3 a few months back myself. But I have a thing for women in video games who look like they could kill me. I don't know what that says about myself, but I feel as if my track record of previous love interests in games like Cassandra in Dragon Age Inquisition or Miranda in Mass Effect 2 kinda proves I clearly have a type. But anyway, the journo is upset because a mod that alters Lae'zel's face is so popular, which currently has around 70,000 downloads. They say the mods that alter female characters are bad because it's a reinforcement of conventional beauty standards on a character who is wholly unconcerned with beauty. But I feel as if you're saying that about Lae'zel is also incorrect, since the character, like Karlach or Shadowheart, are beautiful in their own ways, and it goes deeper than just how they look. And I don't think it's a bad thing if fans want to make characters even more idealized, because after all, that's what mods are for in the first place. The writer then says this: there has been a lot of often toxic discourse in gaming over the last couple of years regarding the appearance of women in video games. A lot of this irrational ire has been directed towards Guerrilla Games for their design of Aloy, the protagonist of the Horizon series. According to the Terminally Online, Aloy is an example of how media is defaming women, making them intentionally unattractive to push some sort of nebulous agenda. That's all nonsense, obviously, and mods that smoothen out facial features are flirting with this narrative even if that's not the author's intention. Why can't these characters just be themselves? The constant pushing of Western white beauty standards is tiring even if it isn't something as trivial as a Baldur's Gate 3 facial mod. And like always, these journalists find a way to reveal their hands and prove that, like everything else that upsets them, it's simply because it doesn't adhere to their agenda and their beliefs. First of all, we do know that female characters are being deliberately made less appealing on purpose by Western creators. Take one look at the last 5 years alone of female character designs and you'd have to be legally blind to not see it's a deliberate attempt almost across the entire industry. I did a whole video a few weeks back where a Naughty Dog whistleblower explained that studios like that and others absolutely have meetings discussing how to create their female characters. And in that video, it's revealed by that whistleblower that the reason why female characters are made less appealing is to cater to the trans crowd out there who they believe will get offended if a female character is too curvaceous or beautiful. But as I've said previously, this idea is nonsense from the get-go. And what they should be doing is making idealized characters for men, women, and transgender people instead. Because by diluting and ruining character designs to appeal to trans players, what these artists are really saying is that they believe trans players can only connect to a character if the character is ugly, which is actually counterintuitive to what these studios would want to be doing. And they are instead offending trans people while also failing their male and female player demographics alike. Of course, this journalist acts as if none of this is real. And it's simply, yet again, somehow white people's fault as Baldur's Gate 3 mods, according to them, bend to white beauty standards. Yet again, these journalists, like many others, doesn't realize what they just said was offensive themselves. And they're condemning the 1.3 million Steam players who use these mods and are calling them sexist, bigoted racists because they want to mod their game. Which again, may I add, has no effect on this journalist's, mine, or yours playthroughs. That's the beauty of single-player games, but for these idiots, it's never enough. You aren't allowed to have fun in your own escapism on your own time. Everything must be filtered through their ideological stances before you can have your fun. And that's not only stupid, it's very wrong and backwards. Also, looking at the Lae'zel mod, I don't really see her as being more white. She has hints of Asian features in her as well. But regardless, none of that matters. They simply made her face more round, which is more an Asian face shape, and gave her bigger eyes, which could be any sort of person. It's not like big eyes are a white person thing only, there's people of all kinds who fit that bill who aren't white. But of course, that doesn't fit the agenda, so naturally they'll ignore it like they always do while they poop their pants, then blame it on you instead. They also complain that another popular mod de-ages Jaheira and smooths out her skin. Okay, and? What's the problem here? How does this mod affect your playthrough exactly? Oh right, it doesn't, and what people do to their playthroughs shouldn't matter, but of course, again, Jaheira being de-aged is likely also somehow the White Devil's fault as well. Another mod apparently smooths out Karlach's skin, and look, and this writer is mad because Karlach is a battle-hardened warrior with scars, which is, sure, fair enough. But it's not like this mod is any better or worse than the other examples, and really when it comes to warriors, especially Nordic ones, they were obsessed with beauty standards themselves, and it was custom for generals and high-ranking officials and armies since time immemorial to be emblazoned with amazing armor and well-kept looks. It's a sign of authority and idealism is what I'm saying, and again, players smoothing out Karlach's skin is fine. Maybe they didn't like how she looked before, that's why it's a mod. And if you disagree with it, that's fine too, because Karlach still looks like her normal self in the base game if you play it with no mods anyways. But I think this journalist is just as tone-deaf as so many others before them, because they're mad that their way of thinking is that everything must be as ugly and contorted as they are, and if the people don't agree with it, that they're somehow in the wrong. I think it's totally fine that players want to embrace sexy, strong female characters, and if they want to put them in bikinis or smooth out their faces or change the hairstyle or something, I say let them do it. It's not like it affects your playthrough anyway. You're within your right to play in the corner by yourself and be ugly all you want. But don't think for a second that everyone else needs to be just as miserable as you are or needs to conform to your needs so that you don't throw a fit. You're not a child, and the world owes you nothing, neither do these mods or the Baldur's Gate 3 player base. People like this is why many gatekeep their hobbies, because when you allow morons like this into your fandoms, they'll do everything in their power to spread their ideological rot in order to make things as miserable as themselves. Screw these people, but sadly, it doesn't end here. There was this big Polygon article surrounding the game Helldivers 2 and how its community has become essentially a real military group that uses call signs and are role-playing as real-life soldiers. I find the entire saga surrounding Helldivers 2 to be awesome and downright hilarious at times. As for the small fraction of time I played of the game myself, I had people in-game moaning when they got shot, and role-playing like they were actually bleeding out. It was amazing. I remember this one guy while I was playing was just blasting the American national anthem through his headset the entire time. I mean, my ears were blasted from it, but I gotta admit, I was laughing at how ridiculous it all was, in a good way of course. But now, like always, journalists and those groups decided that Helldivers 2 is anti-LGBTQ. Because according to them, the game bans any and all flags, signs, or discussions surrounding politics within the game. And the reason why this has riled up the mostly liberal-minded players is that Helldivers 2 is inherently political itself. So banning political speak or symbols within it is hypocritical, but it isn't actually. The reason for this is because Helldivers 2 is not real, sorry to break it to you. And it's also its own universe with its own themes and ideas that exist outside of the cultural zeitgeist that we all live in. Like the Baldur's Gate 3 mods pissing off that one journalist, Helldivers 2 also doesn't need to conform to the ideals of some to appease them. And apparently, within the forums of the game, the devs have been banning or downright deleting any threads that ask for LGBTQ representation. And players are claiming the devs are now bigots, but again, they're missing the point. The devs rightfully realize that by allowing propaganda and flags from the real world to exist in their fictional universe that sole purpose is for escapism, will do nothing but ruin the experience and take players out of their immersion. It would be like playing a Final Fantasy game and randomly you see the American flag in it. It wouldn't make any sense for it being there because America, obviously, like any other country, whether it's Japan or whatever else, doesn't exist within, let's say, Final Fantasy VII. By including real-life symbols and flags into a fictional world, it ruins the game's identity and becomes yet another game that doesn't truly allow players their escapism that they actually crave. One user on Steam said this regarding Helldivers 2. I was banned from the Discord for what I'm about to say, but I do not think it is that controversial. I would like this game to remain politically neutral. Someone in Discord suggested LGBTQ skins. And my response was keep homosexual politics out of the game, and I would like to make this a formal request for public support. I do not need or want political nonsense in my games in support of Trump, Ukraine, BLM, Gaza, Israel, or LGBT, all of which have become politically oriented. And I think what this user is saying is right, and they're not against LGBTQ messaging alone. They don't even want Trump symbols or American flags either, they just want the game to be what it is, a game, and not a political jumping off point that is being used by bad actors to infiltrate and ruin things, and I believe that's a good and noble thing to strive for. Another user said their friend got banned from a Discord for saying Helldivers should add a LGBT cape, to which they said, my friend got permabanned from the Discord without a warning when all bro did was ask if there's a chance they will add a LGBT cape or background. Dude was permabanned and even got a death threat in his DMs. I get it that a lot of people that play this game are Call of Duty fanboys, but dude, it is pathetic how toxic this community is. All he asked was to add in one thing, and for some reason everyone thinks they're gonna cater to LGBTQ people or somehow it's gonna turn into politics. People just think adding one thing will completely ruin the game and end the world. I don't get it and how it's gonna separate us from being united. It's not that deep, it is one thing, which is a rainbow flag. They already got loads of other capes of different colors. I don't see how adding one rainbow cape is going to ruin anything. But see, what this player doesn't realize is all it takes is to add one thing before it becomes 2 other things, then 5 other things, and eventually the entire game is flooded with real-world symbolism and propaganda. And then the entire game just loses its identity completely. This other user perfectly explained why Helldivers 2 needs to stay politically neutral. Just listen to what they say. I can't believe this. It is literally 2024. Everyone should be allowed to express their true gender identity. Otherwise, what even is the point of playing this game? This sort of transgression is nothing short of homophobic, bigoted, closed-minded, and transphobic. Add LGBT representation. It doesn't have to be major. Just add trans LGBT flags or capes. There comes a point where us actual good people need to put our foot down and fight this bigotry. This is unacceptable. My point is that it really isn't that hard to be a good person and give us oppressed players a voice. We are valid and strong. The more people point out this unacceptable hatred and intolerance, the more likely we are going to get our representation we rightfully deserve. Add it now. And this is exactly why I believe Helldivers 2 should never add anything from the real world whatsoever. I don't think the game needs LGBT flags as much as the game doesn't need a Make America Great Again helmet. Like, imagine if Helldivers 2 decided to add flags of countries as capes, and you had some people with Israel capes seeing other players with Palestine flags, and remember the game has friendly fire too. You can imagine right then and there the amount of toxicity and political nonsense that would be going on right there. People would be getting kicked out of parties, shot to death, and harassed for things like this. And it's the same thing with your trans or LGBT capes or whatever else. All you're going to do is turn the game into a politically charged nightmare, and trust me, you don't want that. And as the users said themselves, they only want LGBTQ representation in order to prove a point. It was never about making the game better, it was just to draw lines in the sand to ensure that their beliefs and ideologies are seen by others. They want to actively piss off others or annoy them because then they can use that ammunition in forums, discords, Twitter, or whatever else. And get their way, so to speak, and get people they don't agree with banned or worse. How does any of this help the community in keeping it together? It doesn't. And I think making everyone the same is a good move too, because it allows people who might normally not want to play together because of political beliefs to actually band together. And what they're missing is that this is inherently the point of all of this. Helldivers 2 isn't trying to separate players into camps of us versus them. They're trying to bring all of you together so you can fight for something greater than yourselves, and not see each other for the images and flags that will trigger certain parts of your brain. And it's not just LGBT capes. I know for a fact if there was a Trump Make America Great Again cape that players could wear, it would trigger liberal players the same way conservative ones would be with an LGBT flag. It's all the same nonsense is what I'm saying, and these people aren't realizing that by getting upset about these things, all they're doing is proving that Helldivers devs were right to not include any of this crap to begin with. Then you have this user who says, why keep politics out of a game that is inherently political itself? They say, like the entire premise of all the lore in this game is a criticism of hyper-authoritarian governments that promote nationalism to blind the population into undying faith in the ideas of the American dream. What do you mean keep politics out? The premise of the lore is politics, plus trans people, LGBT people existing is not politics, they are real, not political. See, right there, that user said the entire lore is about the American dream. But Helldivers 2 does not mention or use the American flag whatsoever. The only flag they use is Super Earth. Cause in Helldivers lore, all religions, creeds, and people are united as one under a single flag. So the existence of other flags is pointless, since waving an American or a rainbow flag would mean nothing in that game's world. Cause there is no America or anyone else, there is only Super Earth, and they fail to realize that. Ultimately, what these players fail to realize is that they are demanding ways to segregate and divide each other in a game that proposes that regardless of your political beliefs or upbringings, that you are all citizens of Earth, and that's all that should matter in the end anyway. But the fact so many of these idiots fail to realize this is why Helldivers 2's devs should never bend the knee and appease to anyone of any political party ever. No conservative agendas, no liberals, no furries or gays or straight white males, nothing. Throw all that shit to the wayside, pick up your controller, load your gun, and go shoot some bugs and robots in the name of Super Earth. If you can't see the beauty in its simplicity, then you are unfortunately someone who doesn't understand the concept of escapism to begin with. And finally, I think this Helldivers story perfectly links to this Final Fantasy story where the director of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth said this via bounding into comics. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth director says purpose of entertainment is to give people the will to live, today and tomorrow. This statement comes from Naoki Hamaguchi, who firmly believes entertainment should not extort, preach, or distract any audience with any ideological nonsense, and that video games should always be about escapism and giving people joy so that they can find happiness in life. Hamaguchi was speaking to a Filipino news outlet called Rappler for this interview, to which this journalist asked, "How does it feel to have such a great effect on gamers, especially during this day, and do you have a message for those waiting for this kind of game?" To which Naoki Hamaguchi said, and I quote, "To answer your first question, I myself respect the original game very much. After almost 30 years and remaking this game, having the responsibility of remaking this game, the feeling that comes straight away is I don't want to let the title let this game down, let the fans down. So this is a message to people that are aspiring to join the industry having played this game. There are many forms of entertainment today, not only gaming but movies, streaming, YouTube. But the base is the same. It's to give people the will to live, today and tomorrow. If the title you created allows people to have this feeling, then that's a great feeling. If you don't forget this, then I'm sure you'll be able to create a game that has this effect on people, end quote. And I think what Hamaguchi says here is perfect, and it's what I and many others continue to fight for in this ongoing war for the soul of video games and entertainment at large. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and games like Helldivers 2 prove that you can make great games without pushing a political message. And more often than not, you'll reach more people and change the hearts of those disillusioned by simply giving them joy and happiness, over feeding into their political leanings, because video games can have political themes, sure, but they should never be direct reflections of real-world beliefs. Look at any game that has failed pushing agendas and place them up against Rebirth or Helldivers to name a few. The proof is in their reception, scores, and fans. Making everything political will do nothing but sour the well for everyone. And if you ask me whether it's demanding players adhere to the whims of out-of-touch journalists demanding female characters not be sexy, Helldivers' rejecting of all political commentary, or Final Fantasy's desire to bring joy to everyone, video games should always be about escapism and bringing joy to people's lives. And it's sad how so many have forgotten this due to the radicalization they suffered without even realizing it. But what do you think about all of this? As always, thank you for watching, subscribe, share, and like the video if you enjoyed it, and thanks to my patrons as well. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.